Hello and welcome to the first of our laboratory webcasts. My name's Dawn and I'm the artistic development producer here at Nuffield in Southampton.
My name's Chris and I'm the assistant producer and I work with Dawn.
And we work across a range of projects under the umbrella term laboratory. And laboratories are our artistic development programme, and we felt like we wanted to add to that lab activity with these webcasts. Just because a lot of the artists who come in to meet us regularly, we start to notice similar themes and questions coming up. We thought it might be useful to centralise our advice and try and distribute it as widely as possible. And we thought that job applications would be a good place to start. There's a lot of places out there online that you can get information about very generic CV writing or cover letter writing advice. But obviously every industry is different and there are specific pitfalls and also specific things you can do within a theatre application to really make yourself stand out. And so we're just going to run through a few of those things. It's specifically mostly for freelance creatives, sort of aspiring producers and administrators, and also those quite early career internship placement sort of opportunities. If we've missed your group out or there's anything that you want to know more about, just get in touch with us. But hopefully we'll be able to, using this webcast, break down a few barriers and sort of demystify that process a bit. That's our aim.
So what we're going to cover in this session, we're going to talk a little bit about covering letters as kind of something that you have to do with most job applications and how to structure them. Then we're going to talk a little bit about CVs and how the sort of different options that you have of how to. And then we're going to just talk a little bit about formatting and typeface and layout and some general rules for CV writing that kind of apply to everybody.
Okay, so the cover letter. The cover letter endpoint, the destination for any brilliant cover letter should be a unique, personal, passionate vision statement of why you and the company or you and the job are right for each other. It should be a love letter between those two things. And that sounds very flowery and artistic, but what we're going to propose is actually quite a mathematical, structured approach to beginning that. Because I think a lot of people look at that blank page and don't really know where to begin. Yeah,
there's a definite formula for how to set it out.
Yeah. So our starting point, our suggested starting point is always the person spec. And not even so much just reading it, literally copying it and pasting it over into that blank document. And there's a few reasons for that. Firstly, because bigger companies might actually use a scoring system against that person spec. They might just be ticking off those skills or experiences. So you want to be really clear about them. But even smaller companies have chosen that person spec for a reason and are really short on time. If we're reading 100 applications for a job and we need to see whether people have those experiences as quickly as possible, you want to be flagging them up for us.
Even reading 10 applications can take a long time.
So a kind of really clear example of how you might do this is to have them all out in the order that they come in that person spec. And take them one by one. Usually people will list the most important piece of experience first. So if the first point on that person spec says experience of directing theatre productions to a high standard, an example of your response might be, over the last 4 years I've dedicated myself to directing theatre productions of a high standard. Use the same words, go in the same order. And it sounds prescriptive, but it's really effective. And everything else in those paragraphs around that, you can be yourself and be flowery, but don't assume we know you've got the experience.
Yeah, and feel free to even kind of highlight those points, like bold them or underline them. It sounds over the top, but it makes it a lot easier when you're just faced with a page of text. Kind of around that initial setup, use different projects in different paragraphs. So things that relate directly to what they're asking for, pull them across from your CV, pull those jobs, those experiences that you've had straight into your paragraphs and make each paragraph about one of those things. Don't kind of repeat the same experiences over and over again to prove lots of points because it makes you sound like a one-trick pony. But just say, this is the kind of project that I was working on, this is the skills that I've gained from it, and this is why it matches with your person spec. And then once you've kind of done that and you've done all your job description points, go back to the job description, take out any of the duties, the outline of duties, not the person spec, that they're looking for, and add in anything that you've missed, that you've already got experience of. So showing them that what they're looking for is what you've already done, or what you're capable of doing. And then add your kind of introductory paragraph and your closing paragraph, and then you should be done.
So that's you done with structure. But of course what we have there is quite a prescriptive kind of document, probably. And The last thing we want as employers is to read the same cover letter over and over again. So I think you want to see that as your jumping off point. And from there you can embellish and elaborate and think about talking passionately, think about your values, and think about the way that you actually talk. There's nothing worse than reading I'm a team player, or I work well individually and also as part of a team.
Yeah, like I'm hardworking and motivated.
Yeah, the standard cliches, try and avoid them. But also Chris's big bugbear about swallowing the thesaurus, try and avoid also using words that wouldn't normally come out your mouth. As you're working through that, just keep remembering that it's equally weighted. It's about why you're right for the organisation and why the organisation is right for you. So as much as every CV writing website will tell you, or application writing website will tell you, do your research, it's so important. It's unbelievable how far it'll go. You saying this particular element, your this production that you did, or your policy on diversity is the thing that really spoke to me.
There's one fine point just as you're signing off that's really crucial not to miss out, and this is Dawn's personal bugbear, and this is where you assume a marital status of the person you're writing to. So if you're kind of addressing someone, if it's an informal application and you can use their first name, just use their first name. Saying Dear Dawn Taylor, it's much better just go Dear Dawn and carry on. If you don't know, put Dear Ms Taylor, MS. Don't assume Miss or Mrs. Because you don't know and it could be offensive.
I'm not Mrs Taylor. Drives me insane.
If you don't know whether they're male or female, just give the theatre a quick call, the company a quick call, speak to the administrator or the box office, and they should be able to tell you, and that way you don't embarrass yourself.
Yeah, it's really it sounds like a small thing, but to that person receiving the letter, it's not a small thing. And I suppose just as a general point, because we've whipped through that, but it's worth just saying, you may not have all of the experiences. When you're looking at that original structuring and setting everything out, there may be points in there that you don't have, and I would always encourage people to go for jobs that there's 1 or 2 points they don't have. So show them who you are and what you believe, and that will hopefully make up for any gaps in experience.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about CVs. Most recruiters only look at a CV for 6 seconds, and that's kind of a piece of research that's done across the corporate world, so perhaps it's less relevant in the arts, but people in the arts are still really busy, so you want to kind of make sure that all the things that you want them to know about are really easy to read, really obvious, and also don't underestimate the value of blank space. Blocker text can be really intimidating and people will often just skip over it. It takes too long to process that information. The second thing to think about a CV is that it should never be a static document. You shouldn't say, oh, this is my CV. It should be, this is my CV for this application. And tailor it to the job that you're applying for. Pull out the detail that they are going to be looking at. That each recruiter is going to be looking at a very specific set of criteria. You need to show them how you match it, both in your cover letter and on your CV. For a sort of creative position as a kind of an actor or a director or a designer, something like that, you should probably use a credit CV, something listing all your projects, just to kind of give employers a sense of what you've been doing, who you've been working with, the name of the company, the name of the director, the production, the venue, the dates, all of that kind of stuff, and just cut through all of the things that aren't relevant, because seeing those list of credits is more valuable to an employer. Equally, if you're going to do that, explain anything that is unusual on there. So any unusual titles, the things that we've seen before, are like creative associate or sound director, and either explain them on the CV or explain them in the cover letter. Just give a bit more detail. Make sure if you've got a website that it's really prominent and it's also kind of up to date. But we'll come back to the websites I think probably in a later session. And the last thing to make sure you've kind of always got on a credit CV is your training. It's really important. It's something you spend quite a lot of time doing usually, and it's something that we always look for. So just say what you did, where you did it, and the dates, and make sure that's prominent.
But probably after your work experience, because that's the most important thing.
There are kind of other types of CVs or more traditional types, which you may want to use if you're applying for a producer role, administrator role, something more kind of permanent office-based. But it depends on your experience. If you've been a freelance producer for a number of years, then you might have a lot of credits that you want to highlight. And in that case, a credit CV will be really, really well suited to you.
It also probably depends on the job that you're going for.
Yeah.
Like if you're going for a really project-based job, again, the kind of information they want is who were the directors you worked with, where were the venues, was it a tour? So again, credits are probably more useful. If your job is going to be quite strategic or office-based and systems-based, they probably want to see a traditional CV with here were the duties that I had. Okay, and so the last category of CVs is for really early career roles, internships, placements, or your very first sort of job. And I think people feel quite self-conscious about those CVs sometimes because you don't have a lot to say yet. But that's okay because all the other people going for it probably don't have a lot to say yet either. So the first thing to remember is that in that case, don't worry, employers will know that you're at an early stage. Most of it's in the cover letter, most of it's in the passion that you show there. List your kind of most relevant or the experience you're most passionate about kind of first and make the biggest deal out of that. But also kind of extracurriculars, courses you've done, research you've done, which helps us to find out more about you.
With all your CVs, in whatever format, you're telling a story to the employer. It's the same as the cover letter. They've set out a very specific set of criteria that they're looking for, and you need to show them that you have those criteria. So highlight your key achievements and the details that are most relevant. Focus on why you're suited to the job and the experience that you have that matches. And equally, omit anything or minimise in anything that isn't relevant. So anything where if you're applying for a sort of a sound designer job and you were once a dresser on a show, that is not necessarily a relevant detail, so maybe take it out or just put it further down and group all your sound experience that is important together at the top.
Yeah. Okay, so this next section is about standing out from the crowd, but I suppose it's worth us talking first about content. And really it always comes back to values and why you do what you do, and why this job is really right for you, and why you're right for the job. We've said that a few times, but it's about articulating that in a way that is unique to you. Why do you love what you do right now? Not in the past, not when you were at school, when you were learning how to do those things. That's useful background information to include at the end if you have time.
Yeah.
Right now, we want to know, why are you applying for this job and what is it that makes you tick? And if you do that thing of spending some time figuring out what your values are, it'll help you figure out if you match the company. You know, you need to think seriously about whether this company's values and vision or this artist's practice is the right match for you.
Yeah, and it so often happens that you end up applying for jobs when you kind of aren't, your heart isn't set on it, and it will show in your application because it's not what you're putting, it's what you're not putting, and someone else will have put that has made them stand out. So if you really do believe in the job and you really do have a kind of match there, then your values are how you can demonstrate that. So this section is about formatting and typeface. We're a very visual aesthetic industry. It's worthwhile spending some time just making your CV stand out visually and making employers want to read it as much as anything else. There's been research done on where the eye follows round on a CV. It tends to be down the left-hand side on titles and things that are bolded, things like start and end dates, current job, things like that. People spend a lot more time on those than anything else, so it's worthwhile having them easy to find on your CV. You can kind of find lots of inspiration online about how to design a CV. Just a quick search on Pinterest will give you quite a lot of information about what to use, but try and be inspired by it and combine different styles if you need to kind of find something that's more you. And also something that serves the purpose to the employer. You know, the first thing that you're trying to do is present information in a clear way. There's other things that you can do, like download template ones, which is fine if you do that if you want to, but make sure you kind of adapt them, or you definitely go through and fill out all of the template text so that it's a kind of really clearly yours by the end.
We have seen some CVs from time to time with like template, fill in this space here, left in.
Yeah, which is just killer.
Yeah, just avoid that.
Other things that you can do are use colour. It can be quite important and it can break up a page, but the first thing to remember about it is make sure it looks good on screen and make sure that it prints out okay in colour and in black and white. Typeface and font is something else that's really important. It's kind of underestimated the power of fonts, and again, marketing uses that kind of stuff a lot to communicate different messages. One thing that you should probably always try and achieve is to keep a kind of business-like approach to your CV. So font is really important in doing that. There's a whole range of fonts that get used quite a lot in life, and they're the kind of ones that we recognise all the time. And they're chosen because they look good on screen and they look good when they're printed and they're easy to read. And so they're sort of good choices to use on CVs. And if you want to use an exciting font, do it sparingly. Use it on kind of your name or use it on a sort of subheading, but don't use it for the whole of your CV.
All right. So we're just about ready to wrap up. We're just going to finish up with something which is really important to me and something I've noticed increasingly in the few years that I've been processing and reading job applications, which is confidence and the ways that people's varying levels of self-image and confidence affects the way that they apply for jobs. And I do specifically notice a bit of a gender gap, which is not always the case, and it absolutely varies from person to person. But I tend to find that you can often have two CVs whereby the credits are exactly the same or very similar, and one person will start their cover letter. I am an excellent candidate for this position, I feel passionate, I am dedicated, etc. Although we told you not to say those words, but things to that effect. And somebody else will say, I first started getting into theatre when I was 14, and me and my friends read some plays, and then we did this and we did the next thing. And that's not to criticise anyone, it comes from a place because I felt it myself, whereby you feel not good enough, or you're already telling an employer that you're just still learning and you want to be humble and recognise that you don't know everything yet. And that's great, what a wonderful quality to have. But unfortunately when people are reading letters very quickly, they can be dismissive of that. And I think if you feel like you have that tendency to doubt yourself and you have the tendency to write yourself down, just try and check it all the time. Maybe write your cover letter the way you'd instinctively write it, and then have a friend or an acquaintance who doesn't know you well read it. And try and be quite harsh on yourself. Try and think, well, if I'm applying for this job, I must think somewhere that I'm good enough to do it. Whether you're male or female, whatever your gender is, have a think about those forces and how they are at work in you, and try to get the right balance of those qualities so that we recognise you as the confident, competent and collaborative person that you are. And my second point is, I suppose, just a little about socioeconomics and how educational disadvantage or coming from a background whereby you maybe haven't had access to the same kinds of information or education that other people have can play into making you feel inadequate. This particularly affected me when I used to apply for jobs thinking they're going to ask me in the interview about the recent production of The Cherry Orchard they did, and I have never read any Chekhov, and I couldn't even tell you like what era Chekhov was in, and it stopped me from applying from applying for jobs in the early parts of my career because I thought everyone would be so much more ahead of the curve than I was educationally. And to be honest, it's not as important as you might think that it is. And so own what you are good at and be proud of it, and don't worry about a fixed paradigm which you need to succeed.
So that's pretty much all we've got to say about CVs and cover letters. We hope you found it useful. If we haven't covered something, or you're kind of interested in a different topic that you want us to cover, then drop us a line, let us know, and we'll try and either answer your question or make another one of these videos.
Cool.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
Bye.